Alright, this is just raw. So, ooh, okay. Um, I'm I'm just gonna run through this. I'm practicing baking. I tried making a loaf of bread and it was a failure. I'm in the process of making trying to make a pie crust to make a pie. While I'm making the pie, I get into a conversation with my landlord, and I don't understand the context at first. It's kind of random. He's telling me that he doesn't understand there's a person in his apartment, in the apartment of his daughter, one of his daughters, that is referring to some girl as the Mexican girl, and he's confused because his granddaughters are half Mexican or more Mexican. His daughter's half Mexican, and I'm assuming that the dad is Mexican. Her husband is whatever. So I don't know. So, but the conversation I direct the conversation in more political things, but I bring my family in on it more on a racial basis, having to do with immigration. I don't think I'm listening. I'm just reacting. And but he says it again, and then he gets a phone call, and he responds to the phone call, which cuts the conversation. I go back to prepping my material, and when he's done, he says that his daughter took both of his granddaughters to the doctor to get them checked. And I'm a little bit more puzzled. I'm kind of like, huh? So apparently, one of his granddaughters broke a window of an apartment, and this man. If mythology, wow, this okay. Windows, all everything. So the one of his granddaughters named Lydia at that. You'd have to look up Lydia, but that's a pretty significant name too that has to do with light, shining light. So breaks a window, and in the conflict or in the dispute over the window being broken, or is alleged that I don't really know. There's a little girl that lives in the apartment of the broken, where the window was broken, who goes on to say, apparently, I don't know if it's coerced or not. I'm just assuming. I'm just taking this of a whim. Goes on to assert that for some reason she believes that there's some kind of sexual abuse going on with my landlord's grandkids. So as to address that, his daughter is like, whoa, let me cut this in the bud. She takes them to a doctor for a medical examination in order to, which is pretty crazy. Actually, I mean, I've never heard of anything. That's pretty intense shit. Um, to its medical examination for the doctors to inspect them for any kind of and to clear. Wow, that's traumatic experience all of his own. But so something in my head, he's telling me, and I'm like, oh, he's like, so, he's like, yes, he's like, crazy, and I'm like, all this out of a broken window. He's like, yeah, and I was like, wait, so the mom is saying it? He's like, no, no, the little girl that lives in the house. I don't know nothing else. This is as far as we get. And my thing is, well, that kind of situation tends to be reversed, and he doesn't. He's looks puzzled, like I don't understand what you're saying. At which I reassert, it's that a little. I mean, again, I've have a long history. My entire life essentially has been in the midst of child molesters and victims of child molestation. From what I found out to be my mom, my aunt, an aunt of mine, a cousin, and two cousins of mine that we know of. I believe that there's another cousin that's probably in my mom's state. She's in some type of blind denial, where actually she regressed very far from previously, earlier on in my life. I'm 36, but earlier in my life, in my teenage years, she was able to identify the experience of being molested by a family member, but she was not able to recollect who the family member was. I don't know if that was because she was so young. Being able to identify the time is very difficult, because that again is part of I guess a type of blockage, psychological blockage. But as time has gone on, and I reached, and the reality of this molester became more known to the younger generations that were being protected from it, which is me, my sister, my brother. And the serial rapist, was identified, and his victims were identified. A lot of dark, horrific secrets came out about my family that gave me, transformed my entire perspective of a lot of shit. Okay, I don't got no time for fucking bullshit lies. That's why I'm so critical against what I call Abraham. But Abraham is basically my uncle Rudy, who's dead now, but he died a mess, cool with on all the family. But what I found out after his death was that he had actually raped four generations of girls, starting with, and that's why through learning of the three generations, actually I only knew about two. This is how it went. I did this all backwards. First, I found out of his last victim, who was a cousin in my age, who left the family for over a decade, and then after having a kid and he was dead, decided that she didn't want to allow that to separate herself from the family, and she wanted her kid to know them. So she reconnected, which was great, because I was just great to see her, not knowing anything, and then found out she was not hiding it, no shame about it, and she was open about it, which was kind of like wow. And through her activities, another cousin that I never knew about, who was his granddaughter, who is about 42 right now, maybe 44, well, 42. This was when she was 40. I was able to meet her and find out that she was a victim. And then that was all in about 2008-ish. Yeah, 2008-ish. And then, as a result of one of my cousins dying of stomach cancer, who was the son of an aunt of mine, who I was raised and taught that she was a bad person, she was a bad mother, she was just crazy, not to listen to her. Well, I was taught that by my mom and by my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles. Well, I came to find out after it was her son. After her son died, she spoke to her mom for the first time in like 30, 40 years or something like that. And I was confused as to why. I didn't understand. I of course immediately instinctually it was like, oh well, because she's crazy. But I come to find out that it was because she was raped by her dad, and when she told, the family exiled her, disavowed her, and that would happen to the other two victims as well. My mom was never, and then as all this came out, what ended up happening was that my mom, for a second, she had one conversation that I had with her that was really deep. She was able to verbally express, Tim, I think Rudy may have done something to me. And I was like, that's good, Mom, that's good. That's important. Let's keep, but that was in 2000, and yeah, that was definitely 2009. By 2012, the tension rising from the awareness got to the point where 2012, and I bring it to the forefront with a straight up direct confrontation, not directed at her, but a general confrontation for the family, like bringing up rape is very relevant in our family. What is the notion here? And it's interesting because they should have. I mean, when I was in fifth grade and I told on Mr. Schneider at Brentwood Elementary for molesting girls, and then the girls were ashamed and pissed off at me for telling, and that was literally, you told, why did you tell? We're gonna get in trouble if they find out. And I would tell them they're fucking stupid. I'm a fifth grader too, so you know, I was like, you guys are fucking stupid. And then the boys all wanted to beat me up to support the girls, and then the end result, I was just transferred to another class in the same school, and the teacher stayed there for another 20 years teaching. So, but my family didn't expect me to have the same reaction with them, which I guess most families would say, but I couldn't, you know. If I did it when I was in fifth grade, why wouldn't I do it when I'm 34? So I brought it to the forefront in a very, I thought it was a casual way. You know, as women of our family, do you guys think it's right for politicians to have the right to determine what rape is? At which point I got some very vicious vitriol back at me, and the first reaction I got was, "What's the matter, Tim? Are you going for my Aunt Xenia in Oregon, who is not a victim, but is a victim only of her ego and the way she perceives herself? I call her the witch demon of my family, and she's younger than my mom, but she's the dominant one, taking advantage, another victimizer. She's become her own spiritual molester in one sense. And to hold her dominant position of false morality, she had to shut me down. So she came at me with, are you battling demons?" And I was like, whoa, what? I was like, yeah, I'm asking as women, do you guys have a say? Because we had a serial rapist in our family that raped 4 generations, and I, without hesitation, included from my mom to Marlene and then went on the list, and totally diverted that by saying, "Oh, what's the matter, Tim? Do you have urges that you can't control?" At which point I get militant, and I was confronted her with, "What does it matter? You guys had no problem harboring and protecting a rapist over his victims for 60 years. If I have urges and I rape anybody in the family, you guys are just gonna treat me better, apparently. So what's your point of your question?" And that brought into this thing where I'm sure she communicated with my mom something about not letting me bring up demons because it'll make my mom question my mom's salvation. They use this whole religious bullshit. Again, Abraham's a rapist and Lot's a rapist and Noah's a child molester too. And they use biblical power in order to quench this. And I'm sure the argument was Jesus already healed you from this, and if you talk about it and bring it back up, then you're raising demons and you're destroying all the work that Jesus did to bring you through it. So my mom's regression was all the way to the point where she no longer was even willing or capable of identifying that she was a victim of abuse, period. So, and then in one sense I was a victim of abuse. An adult not perform sexual acts, but was with me, but as growing up and masturbating and shit like that. There was an uncle of mine who would put on porn and encourage. It was like a guy thing to sit naked and jack off to that thing. And this was before I was. This was about when I was 13 or 12 or something like that. And but no excuse. But anyways, he wasn't very predatory about that though. He was, again, maybe I'm minimizing, but that's, whatever. I don't claim to. I don't think anybody has the power to do true reflection internally. Even the Taoists say, you know what? When you meditate, never meditate. Meditate on everything, but never meditate on who you really are. Because if you ever see who you really are, it'll destroy you. It'll drive you mad, and you'll never come back. And I think that has some of this shit with the spirit journeys of the Native Americans and stuff like that. You associate it with an animal as opposed to trying to find out who you are, because there's that inability to see. Not even Carl Jung or Freud was able to look inside of themselves. It was always an external analysis. But I don't know what effect that has on me. But while he's telling me this, instinctively, I'm like, this seems to me, this little girl is saying this in reverse. If the scenario plays out as it traditionally plays out, which is that there's a male figure, most often not the father, but often enough the father, sexually. Okay, we say molesting, but it's having sex. That's the whole shit. Like you see the movie Precious and stuff like that. Basically the Precious setup, where the mom's reaction is it's a format, it's a template for a reason. It's a psychological template of pure trauma, stressed out, underdeveloped sensory things in the nodes in the brain or whatever that allow this kind of shit to go on, that are operating not only in the abuse, but also the third party plays. My family were just as much the child molesting the victims as the guy putting his dick into them, because that's what I mean. Is it's a sexual, it's sex. We say molesting to be nice with it. It's fucking. It's sex. It's having sex with kids. So my analysis is that in all probability, this little girl is articulating something projecting, externalizing it in a random scenario that is the only outlet that she has, and her family is so ingrained and blind to it that they're in this so heated and this raw, animalistic, impulsive, that they don't try to silence it as much as think of, oh yeah, well, this will get the window fixed or some kind of weird shit like that. But it's the little girl crying out, was basically trying to tell somebody in Morse code kind of sense that she's being a victim of sexual abuse, which means that it's the non-father figure. And then when I said this, he's like, well, yeah, there's a boyfriend that lives in the house named Javier who's kind of crazy. So she's she's being fucked by the boyfriend. The mom knowingly would be protective of the boyfriend, which means you either coddle the little girl, oh, he's just, or more aggressive. Or perpetrator as well, like in the Precious scenario, which is a very extreme case. In taking because it's all infantile state of mind, so taking a jealous state as far as like denying the little girl's accusations, not as that she doesn't believe her, but as he loves me more than you. He just does that because he's a man, which is that's where I get all this Christian biblical shit from. So now all this to say, and we know that the police don't hold rape in their interest. Again, the 12,000 rape kits that went uninvestigated, and again, equated just 10% of those of being repeat offenders. That's 100. That's a 1,200. And I like to go the next level and equate at least 1% of them to be associated, to be perpetrated by actual police. Like when I was a bartender, going home at night, I've seen police pull up in gas stations when girls are dressed in hot clothes, short, skimpy shit, getting gas, and do shit, ask them questions, like roll up like something like whatever, like this. There was one case in particular when I was on Lancashire and was it Victory or something like that? think it's Victory. I was going by the 76 on a skateboard, and I was coming up, and the cop went, and there was this girl in a miniskirt, and the cop came up in there, and he's like, hey, something like that. And as I skated by, I said, cops are rapists too, girl. Don't fall for it. Be careful. He's a sexual predator. Screaming like that as I go by, and he was like, it was fun, hilarious to see it. I mean, it was not hilarious. It's kind of scary because he does it on a regular basis. That was North Hollywood division. So these guys, and they have the highest rate of domestic violence for a reason. This all goes to with their moral duty, which is associated with Abraham and his Christianity in one sense, even though they say separation of church and state, that's not real. But so and then the girl, and then the same scenario with the experience with my school with Mr. Schneider. It was basically the cops' only role in order to, because it's an elite school, it's a rich area, it's basically like a Beverly Hills area. In order to save the school face, what they do is they get the cop's story, and they just basically, when they ask the girls in a shameful way that gets them to reiterate the perpetrator's story, so that they can just sweep it under the rug. And when you're dealing with a low-income immigrant scenario too, it's why would they want to waste resources? Because they don't make any money off of rape or sexual predator investigations. They don't generate, and we know that the police are because of the way the structure is, whether it's right or wrong, the reality is the police force are structured as a money-making business. So if they're not making money, the chief is not doing a good job. It no longer has to do with crime rate, and the way they incorporate crime rates is they just continue to expand the crime list. So now debt is a crime. Like Stephen Colbert made a point about showing more people across America are actually going to jail for an unpaid debts. And then likewise being billed in some extreme cases, and this is on the Stephen Colbert, so this is pretty public known stuff because he's not really under the radar. People are being charged for the time they're in jail, and they're in jail for not being able to pay fines. So when they get out of jail and they end up not paying for the time that they were in jail, they end up a rotation. And of course, it's racially the racial line is very distinct there. But putting a sexual predator in jail costs the state money and doesn't make the state any money. Treatment, therapy, counseling, and then aftercare, which is parole. And the parole for a sexual predator is a lot more expensive than the parole for a non-predator. So it's not in the interest of the police, particularly any police department, particularly the LAPD, to pursue sexual predators. And that's why you have these 12,000 rape kits. And then what you get is just when they find them, that doesn't mean that they automatically make it a point to like, hey, thanks for pointing this out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put all our manpower, like the way we did against street gangs, we're going to put all of that into these 12,000 rape kits, and we're going to tack all the DNA, and we're going to find all this, and we're going to get all these guys and take them off the street. No, then it's just, okay, the reaction is we're going to put one or two guys on it, which is an impossible task, so that the statute of limitation, that's why I say at least 1% are cops. So the statute of limitation, which was implemented after the priest epidemic came out, and they first created a statute of limitations for sexual assault, and they made it that a victim a perpetrator can't be prosecuted after the crime, if the crime they're accused of happened 14 years prior. So as long as 14 years pass, and that might have been shrunk since then, but as long as 14 years pass, and a victim takes 14 years, like my mom's, since she's 72, so it's taken her 60-something years to and it's even gone backwards, then now there is no crime. It's an uncrime. So now the question is, and this is the big challenge, I talk a lot of shit about morals and power and doing right, and I don't know what's going to be moving forward, but what will I report in the future? What can I do? If I say I can't do anything, then I become them. Challenge. No magic in this.